See if it'll focus. Check out that tooth. So the question is, can I file that back in a cost-effective way? In the past, I would have just filed and filed and filed until I got rid of it. Let me just see how many strokes it takes to get rid of that. And see if I can find the gold tooth. There it is. Here's the gold link right there. See, those aren't so bad. So let me take a few strokes and let me just see what we have. Yeah, this one's take more. These are getting worse and worse and worse. So I can file it back, I guess. It's just going to take a while. I have a C83 X-cut Husqvarna chain. And since this saw right here is one of my primary saws, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to hang this on the wall. When I have one of the vintage saws with a 24-inch bar, I'll take this and sharpen it up and run it there. But $24. Brand new loop. You know, I'm becoming a fan of this stuff here. Husqvarna hasn't been able to wean me away from VersaCut bars yet. That's not happening. Unabashedly a fan of the VersaCuts, all right? I've used them now for a couple of years. And they are lighter and they're a little more stiff than the other light bars. Now you got to remember, I'm a guy who's got plenty of these total bars. I've got Sugiharas, and I've got a lot of time on these Zamaras right here. Now one of the things is when they have all those cutouts like that, yeah, that's, you know, drops the weight some, not radically, but it also affects the stiffness of that bar. I like the 372 style with the internal clutch, external sprocket because it's a lot more exposed. Now I understand why they did what they did. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why a company will have the external clutch system. One of the reasons they do the external clutches is that's where the heat is, right? It takes the heat away from the case. So it made all the sense in the world for Husqvarna on these designs, the 550 and these, to try to keep as much heat from the cases as they can, because they were trying to design around other issues. So having the external clutch pulls that heat away from the cases. So I understand that. And let me fire this up and let it get the chain kind of spinning and see if it loosens up any. No idea if I have any gas in it. A little bit. I like that sighting window on the gas tank. Another feature that the 5 Series has that I like. One thing I'm going to say to the guys who've replicated these builds that I do, where there's a significant increase in compression, use the decomp. Use it on starting these stupid things, because The pull starts on the 562 aren't the strongest. All right, this one here is a little bit of an odd deal for me. There's really nothing wrong with this bar and chain. It's a little dull. But I'm going to pull it off and hang it up on the wall for now. Not because it's a bad bar and chain and not because it's not working out well for me. But I want to run this on some of the older saws. And the other reason is it's got .063 gauge chain, which is hard for me to find. So, kind of an odd story. I ended up with this saw. Look at that. 6 rivets on the sprocket. They call it the X-Tough. And there was a guy on eBay that was selling these with 5 chains for like 125 bucks. I gotta tell you, that's a steal. So I bought them, and I'm gonna go to that. So we're gonna pull this bar and chain off, again, not because there's anything wrong with it, and not because it particularly needs to be sharpened, but it's a 063 or .063 gauge chain, and I can't get those for life of me. I can't find those. So this will go to the occasional use big saws. I can buy X-Cut C83 50 gauge or .050 gauge chain, and it's not hard for me to find. And since this is a production saw, supportability is more interesting than anything else. The 565 has been wearing a 28-inch bar now for a little while, and the reason is I've had to fell some just very, very large cherry and ash trees, and the way I wanted to cut them is I wanted to use, I guess, the game of logging style where you kind of poke through and bore cut from the side, in addition to what I usually do. And having that extra length makes it easier for me. Not everybody, but it makes it easier for me. And that is the reason why I've done that. When I use my normal method of felling, where I bore cut from the front and then kind of work from the side, work my way around, I can pretty much take down anything with a 20-inch bar in half. Now once I get these trees on the ground, probably going to hang that 28-inch bar up and go back to a 20 on this saw, or at least a 24. Right now it's going to wear a 28 for a while, just simply because it's what I need at this point in time. And to those, they'll say, well, what about your small, light 20-inch bar? Well, as I said back then, I'll say it again, my choice of bar and chains is situation dependent, not on just style or just arbitrary. So I have a specific reason and a specific need for the longer bar in my mind. Of course, everybody else has their own opinion. But while I'm still doing those trees, I have probably another 30 or 40 of trees of that size. I'm going to use this bar and chain on this saw. The other point is this 565, this is going to be a little subtle thing. I know I'm rambling, but I know there's all the push about dynamometers and all that, And, you know, this is like deja vu for me. I remember back in the 80s when dirt bikes were kind of going through a revolution. And if you remember, just about every dirt bike test had a dynamometer test right alongside of it to sort of verify and support the impressions of the tester about whether it's fast or not or this and that. There's an intangible with the dirt bikes, and I have a hunch that we're going to see the same thing show up with the chainsaws. So let's assume you have a bunch of dirt bikes that are all within, say, a horsepower of each other, making 40-something horsepower, you know, 125s or 50 horsepower 250s, right? The peak power means something to guys who are into specs, for sure. All right, back to what I was doing. We had the log buyer come and he pulled all those logs. You know, some of them were standing dead and some of them were live and some are big and some are small. Net, it's a nice little chunk of change. And this is about, actually a little more than what I expected because of that ash. You know, some of the ash is just not the best. So, and that brand new chain I stuck on that 562 just earlier in the video is now wasted because it was in the dirt frequently. Probably would have been better off with this saw out here. Some of those logs were big. Now the thing is that the push is to get rid of the ash trees. I think I mentioned that. And man, you're going to hear them shooting and shooting and shooting because we have a bunch of vegetarians here. I think deer hunting is as much target practice as anything else. But so we have the old ash and the cherry. A lot of that ash is one step away from being standing dead. I don't have bug here. It's not because we have the ash borer disease. What it is we had a couple of years of almost extreme drought where there was just no water for those trees to have. And ash trees happen to like a fairly, you know, wet environment. That's why they're down there in the swamp from the get-go. So they went that one season where they have virtually no water, and they've never been the same since. So the forester was telling me to get them now because a lot of it is standing dead, and get them before they are effectively no good. And interestingly enough, one of the logs I pulled out that I had put in for firewood, it's the one, oh my God, the fact that I remember this is scary. It was the one that I had cut down with this old L77 because it was standing dead. Branches were coming down and I wanted to get rid of it before it came down and hurt somebody. Well, I have it over in the firewood pile and the log buyer says, drag it up because there's better wood than that than some of the ones I just pulled out. Let me put this one back on the truck. It's ready to go. 562 right back up on the bench and see how badly that chain got dinged. Now here's the thing. I did one group of logs with a square ground chain by a fellow named Matt. He did the square grind on it. And that chain actually lasted, in my mind, better than this one did. And this is a brand new Husqvarna chain. I guess that's not bad. It's just it needs more raker. It doesn't bite hard enough. Let me check all the teeth. You know, actually they're not bad at all. I thought this could be worse because I had to push on it quite a bit. Make sure I don't have a burr. No, there's no burr. So let me put a couple of strokes on this chain. Brand new chain. Here's the gold. So all right, So that's preferred method of sharpening yet again. So let's go see if we can put it in the wood and take a look at it versus the new C83 and see if we can tell the difference. So that one right there was kind of an interesting, that's a cherry, and it's 7 foot long is what he can get out of it because, you know, it goes right to the crotch. So his point to me was there's two ways he could do it. Is he could give me 8 foot, go up in here, and it would be a lower grade, or have a higher grade at 7 foot. So he took that approach. See, I'm learning this stuff. Now these trees over here, these were standing dead. At least that's what I thought. And he agreed. This one right here, this big giant tree I took down, was that. And so we got a good chunk of change out of it. But had I let this sit any longer, it would have been all gone. And what he was pointing out to me was there's some spots like right here where it's kind of lighter. That's good wood down there, but like that's not so good. And that's the clue that it wasn't really a live tree anymore. But they can still take it. They'll still get wood out of that tree. I'm just not going to get a premium price out of it. But it's certainly better than fire. And then these ones that are really white, there's no heart to them. And it's a size thing. If these had a larger diameter, they'd be really, really pricey. But being smaller, they're still good money, a whole lot better than firewood, but again, not top dollar. Now, there are a couple of logs in here that got good money. And then this cherry over here did, because it was a live tree. That one did pretty good too. So I do have a combination of live ash with no hearts that get good money. And then I also have a combination of ones that are, you know, standing dead. Yeah, either way, I can tell you that it's a lot better selling it to a log truck guy like this than it is selling it for firewood. So this log right here, it's 16 foot, cherry, got good money. Or all these other smaller ash trees that had no hearts, they got decent money. You know, certainly more than I expected being so small. But the advice I was given is get it down now while it's still alive before the bug comes. That's the push. So anything around like 10 inches, 11 inches and up take. So that's what I've been doing. And the stuff that's smaller than that, like this is a hickory right here, the thing just split. I'm surprised he took that log, but he did. But as I get further back into the woods, the diameter goes up. It's more like those out there further into the woods, and they all got decent money, those logs. But I have to get through all the small stuff first to get to the big ones. I took a walk out there yesterday and counted around 50 to 52 22 to 28 inch ash trees, and they're still living. So that's really where I'm going to get my payoff, but I have to get through a lot of this stuff to get to them. And then what doesn't sell for timber goes over to that pile there for firewood. I got a question, made me laugh. Well, geez, how come you're cutting the limbs off versus starting from the small and working back to the big over there? That's because what I do is I drag the whole tree to the firewood pile first, cut the top, and then if it has a possibility of being a saw log, I drag it over here and cut it off, and then take the stump back over there if it's not a good stump, or just leave it here. And I'm about full up right now. You know, I need these to go away so I can start. Someone's got a black powder gun over there. They're practicing. I've been hearing them all day. That's not what I'm doing today. Right now I'm going to see if that preferred chain grind can show a decent chip relative to a brand new C85. So I'm going to start the saws up, and then we're going to just take it into that little piece of cherry right there and just see what they do. All right, here's that new Husqvarna 28. You know, that feels lighter than the other bar does. I don't know, that actually feels pretty light as compared. It's not, it's a steel solid bar. But I like the fact it's got 6 rivets in the nose like steel does. This is a I guess that c83 chain. Let's see what it does for a chip. Let's see if I can get this thing started first. This is the 565. Man, I like this saw. Jeez. Cuts nice. I'm not going to put a lot of time on it because I'm going to be felling with it pretty soon. See, I don't like it being too grabby, so if I get too aggressive with the rakers, it gets a little grabby. Then it starts jumping when I do bore cutting. Actually, let me poke the bar into the wood. That's what I like. It goes in real smooth and it cuts fast enough, and the saw is a smooth running saw, but it's that feel I get as I plunge cut that really tells me if I've got the rakers right for me. Now, it's not about speed anymore. It used to be about how fast I can get through a log. Now it's not about that. It's about, can I get through it safely? Does it cut smooth enough to where I can do, you know, the more advanced plunge cuts and things like that? Or is it just grabby? You know, when I used to do my chains for my old saws, I was very aggressive on the rakers and they were just too grabby. Let's see what happens with a 562 with a preferred grind on it. My hunch is this is going to be a little bit on the grabby side, but it'll be really good for cookies. And that's exactly what it is. It'll self-feed. It'll self-feed through that cherry very nicely, and it cuts very quickly. But as soon as you start doing the plunge cut, doing the same exact plunge cut I did with the C83, you start seeing it jump because it's a little grabby. I don't know how to quantify it other than to show you, but that's why I get a little, you know, a little finicky about some of the, you know, the chain grind techniques that I've been seeing. Yeah, I mean, in terms of cutting speed, there's no doubt. For example, the square ground chain is, it cuts even better than the preferred if I'm cutting straight through the log. But I'll tell you what, it's too grabby for me to run for felling. Just way too grabby. That saw will come right back out and bite me. So I don't use it for that. I use it for blocking and stuff like that. And it does a nice job. But even the preferred chain right there, I may just get rid of that chain. I'll use it for bucket on the landing, but that's too grabby for me to use for plunge cutting, even though it cuts really, really well. It's really, really sharp. but I think the rakers are just a little bit too aggressive for plunge cutting smoothly. Doesn't mean I can't do it if I just lay on it, but the point is I have to modify in order to make it work, versus that C83, which just goes right through the wood, plunges right through it. I don't know whether or not that's going to show on the camera as graphic as it is when you're running the saws. The difference is actually quite shocking when you're running the saws. So anyway, where I was going with all that was, like back in the 80s when they were doing this dyno thing, everything had to be on a dyno. And the high numbers means it was the fastest motorcycle in the group, you know? Well, the thing is that what they figured out is it isn't always about more. Sometimes it's about power delivery. So the motorcycle that might have a little less horsepower, but it came on and was easy to control and over a wider power band, that ended up being a better race motorcycle than the one that was all about peak power for most people. So I think what we're finding, in my mind, I think we're going to find the same thing is really true, not just with the chainsaw builds, but also with the chains. Now I just stuck that one, I just finished sharpening in the log, and it kind of cut like crazy when I was just going straight through. But when I was doing the plunge cut, it wanted to come right back at me. It wanted to jump right back out of there. And I found that to be the case on some of the square ground and some of the more aggressive chains that cut very fast. But they're, I don't know, for lack of a better word, they're not forgiving. They're not easy to operate. And for what I have to do, I will sacrifice a little bit of speed and a little bit of horsepower in order to have a bar and chain combination I can very easily plunge, nice smooth cutting plunge cuts, in a saw that has a wide power band to where I don't have to have it all wound up looking in a tack in order to get enough power to go cut these very large trees with a 28-inch bar. The 565 is that. It's a very forgiving power band. It may not come up to speed as quick. It doesn't have the throttle response of like the 572 or my hot rod 372s. But it kind of comes on a little slower, but it pulls at a little bit lower RPM. And it has more than enough to pull a 28-inch bar. And when I'm doing my plunge cuts, it doesn't slow down. And the C83, like the LGX before, it cuts fairly smooth. I actually like the C83 better for the plunge cuts. I like the stock C83 better than any of the custom grinds I've tried so far, be it square or preferred or anything else. Even my own hand filing, I like the stock C83 for the plunge cuts. It's just safer. And it's just that simple. And yet again, it's a matter of compromises and what's your definition to win. And to me, that whole saw concept I was trying to bring to the table, I don't know, a couple years back really plays here. Strong enough to do the work you need, light enough to carry it around, reliable enough not to worry about the saw, forgiving, and that's a word that encompasses a lot of things, but both the way the chain is ground, but also the power delivery of the saw that lets you work with that saw easily over a long day. And I find the 565 with that 28-inch bar with the Husqvarna C83 or the 24-inch bar with the same C83 is just that. The Versacuts are a little bit lighter. I like the LGX, it does good, but the C83 seems to be a little smoother in the plunge cuts. And so I get skeptical, you know. I look at the experts online and I try some of the things they've done, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. And years ago, I guess I've said it many times, it's what's your definition of win? And everybody has their own. And to me, it's life with a saw. Does it work with me, or do I have to work around it? And a lot of the custom builds and a lot of the custom grinds and stuff like that that I've tried, I have to work around them. Yeah, they're impressive in what they do in that narrow band of performance envelope they need to perform. They do quite well. But in my world, where sometimes it's a small tree, sometimes it's brush, sometimes it's plunge cutting a very large tree, the broader
capability set's more important to me, and more important than that is it easy for me to use? Like I said, am I working around it, or is it helping me get my job done? That's kind of like the metric I go by. And so far, you know, I keep going back. You know, for most of my saw work, a 20-inch bar with a stock chain does most of what I want to do around the farm. And I'm finding that a 24 or 28 with the c83 is helping me with the very large trees. And 24, they all work. I don't know, sometimes I want a 24, sometimes I want a 20. When I'm in the hedgerow and doing just normal work, I want the 20. When I'm dropping these trees, I want at least a 24, is where it's coming down, you know. Then next summer I'll be out doing brush and firewood and I want a 20 again, you know what I'm saying? I always see these threads about what's the best saw, the best chain, the best bar, the best this, best that, the best builder. There isn't a best. There's what works for you and whatever your situation is. And I think that's what I wish I could get across to people, is instead of trying to hunt the elusive that you'll never get, learn to use the tools that are available and be grateful for them. And yeah, if you want to tweak and tune, it's fun. But to define your success based on what somebody else is saying or building online, I think that's the definition of failure. Let's see if this old 61 will restart. I had it running. Oop, that turned on.